Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities, and it's going to be really an amazing experience, and I look forward to you joining me on the jar. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Mental Health Today. I'm your host, Ken Stearns, and it's another beautiful day. Happy 3rd of July to everybody that's going to be in the U.S. celebrating America's birthday tomorrow. I've got a post scheduled for LinkedIn, Mark Twain quote, we don't always have to, patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when they deserve it. So, great quote. And I think super, super poignant for so many people in so many countries around the world. We love our countries, but we may not always love the people that we elect, which is kind of bananas. Remind you to go out and vote so you can complain. Otherwise, you don't have much to talk about. Lauren Alderfer, welcome to the show. Welcome to Mental Health Today. Thanks for being a guest.
Thank you, Ken, for having me.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited because Lauren and I were talking off, just before we came on, and a couple of things. One is, expat recognizes expats. So if you've ever lived overseas for more than, I think it takes a couple of years to kind of consider yourself really an expat. First 2 years are too easy. And, it's after that you really, you really actually have to give up everything in the U.S., like your bank, all the stuff that you were holding on to. When you get to come back after 20 years and open your storage, that really is an expat. And so Lauren and I have that commonality, although she started off in South America for a long time. Very interesting backstory there, I'm sure, Lauren. And then we shared a home in the subcontinent. We both lived in India for Lauren for quite a bit of time, and I traveled there for quite a bit of time. So I'm thinking, we were in the same airports and probably the same hotels or certainly the same area at some point, Lauren. We've been a lot closer than we are now, which is quite interesting. So welcome to the show. And, the other part that I wanted to touch on before, just as an intro, I've spoken to so many people that are into the microdosing, into psilocybin conversation, and trying to use this as a the plant medicine, that are coming from a healing space, that were either practitioners, in helping people, and they found it, or they were actually healed themselves by plant medicine, and then were so overwhelmed with the power of it that they decided to dedicate their own lives to getting into microdosing and just sharing with other people or helping people do journeys or do the healing. And so it's interesting because you're coming from a total mindfulness space. You got your yoga, you're a yoga master, I would probably guess would be probably the appropriate term. And so I'm very interested to hear your story and your take on this relative to what you've seen and how it connects regular people to the practices and the mindfulness and spirituality that you've achieved just by meditation and mindfulness. So welcome to the show. Tell us about your new book and how did you end up writing about this? And, have you experienced healing medicine in the South, in South America, or did you find it in India? What's happening?
Well, thank you for that introduction, Ken, and it's really fun to be here. And yes, like those places have interwoven themselves in me, and that magical, surrealistic world of South America is so prominent in the psychedelic space. But that Eastern wisdom of all the years in India and being into meditation since I was really a kid, and throughout my life to a dedicated practice, see that as part of the psychedelic landscape these days. So that's really was my own journey. It wasn't in psychedelics per se, but it was certainly in mindfulness. And I was teaching mindfulness in India and the subcontinent, and also writing about mindfulness, particularly for teachers because I'm a long-time educator. And then several years ago, I ended up having a high dose, and that led me to microdosing, and that led me to getting certified as a microdosing coach. But all that being said is that the reason why I just am such a vocal advocate for microdosing is because for me, my journey in mindfulness has been decades and decades to tap into those non-ordinary states of being. And I think that plant medicine done correctly and done with mindfulness, has this incredible potential of having us have a shortcut to the benefits of mindfulness. And we know for mental health, and as James Fadiman, like the father of microdosing, also says it's for well people to be more well. So for me, mindfulness has 5 components that we can look at in the microdosing field, which is, I've kind of put together the acronym of peace. It gives us greater presence. You know, we feel more present where we are. It gives us a greater sense of awareness. Excuse me, I forgot the E. So P, presence. E is this equanimity. But in the mental health space, which is for people who are also caregivers of people with either medical conditions or mental health conditions, it gives us a kinder word, is ease. You know, we just greater ease of not jumping to reactivity or jumping to judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Equanimity is just like, oh, it's easier, I can tolerate this. So that's the ease. Then A is more awareness of the other person's actions, awareness of our own, which helps us set boundaries. C, I look at as deep connection to like our own well-being, connecting to others and connecting to community. And the final E is a sense of expansion. And I think we can all feel in ourselves when we're in fear or anger, you know, we shrivel up, right? But when we feel peaceful and happy, we just naturally, our body to relax and expand. So those are the 5 components that make the word peace, that are the foundation pieces of mindfulness, but they're also the benefits of microdosing. So if you can microdose within a safe space and knowing you're doing it in a way that's beneficial to you, I think those are the benefits that people get.
It's interesting. I had a period of 1 month where I was given a dosage of, daily pills. And I think these are some of the benefits. I like that ease one, right? The present, you're more present. You are at ease. You can tolerate a little stuff more. Although I do recall being forgetting that I was actually doing it. And this is back in Vietnam, and I was getting a test done, and there was a guy talking on his phone. You know how sometimes people do very loudly in a private place or a public place, right? And it was kind of piercing my tranquility. And it was one of those where I realized it took me a little bit to realize that I was actually super hyper aware. I was at a really elevated state. And then I was like completely and just absorbed into his conversation. And then when and then it was kind of, then it upset me, right? Then I was like, wait, what am I doing? Like, and I was completely like listening to this guy's calling, just kind of going, you should hang up now. Yeah, you should hang up. So my awareness was very heightened. Right?
And then what you do with that awareness sometimes can be more up to you.
And I think it is where this is where it makes a difference having a coach and a guide and a journal or a book to kind of guide you is to, I think the intention behind taking psilocybin is probably as important as anything, setting the stage and the intention of what you're about to do. And then knowing that these are the things that are going to happen along the way and making sure that you've got the good intention behind it.
I think you touched on what was part of the motivation. I didn't really have motivation to write the book as much as I was like pulled and called to do it. So I have written other books on mindfulness, and I always write about my own experience, and I teach based on my own experience. I think it hits the nail on the head. I don't disregard or make a judgment of how people end up microdosing, because it's kind of like going to a yoga class. You lived in India. How yoga became so popular in the West is so different than how the yoga teachers taught me in India.
Yes,
but people still feel the benefit. So it could still be the same way if you go into if you end up interacting with plant medicine, fungi, or not necessarily, or synthetics in a recreational way. But what I want to advocate for is to do things in a mindful way, and that does start very much with intention, and it also starts with education. So I liken it to if I go to a teacher in India to learn a technique or to learn school of meditation, I'm going to seek out a good teacher to help guide me. And the same with microdosing. I don't want to just do it on the fly. So I think that if we have discernment in when we look for teachers or guidance coaches, I think that's also true for microdosing.
Great.
But I also understand that people are microdosing on their own, so why not give them, it was the intent was just to do a journal, but that it ended up being, there had to be more of a context to do it safely and with more guidance. So it ended up becoming a guidebook and a journal. So anybody can read the book and learn about microdosing and go approach it through that lens of mindfulness.
When was the first time you took a dose?
It was a high dose. Quite a few of my longtime teachers and meditation teachers who very quietly have tried things but don't want to be very public about it, and Western teachers. And it took me quite a while to decide to do it because it had to be the right conditions, the right person, all that discernment. And it was just in the last 5 years. And I will say that it was not different than my deep meditations. It was a confirmation and an affirmation of all the years of meditation. And that's what I've heard longtime meditators similar experiences.
Yeah, I was listening. I'm here sharing with you, staying in Pensacola, Florida, and super fortunate with an old grade school buddy. And we're waking up at 5 in the morning and we're doing these beach walks and try to go catch the sunrise. And we've added a little element of just when we get to the end of our first half of the walk, we're right about there and we're facing the sun when it's gonna rise, and we sit down and we do a meditation. And I've been doing guided meditations, listen, different people, Joe Dispenza, and then I did a Eckhart Tolle, Eckhart, and he's funny because he's always like making fun of people. He was doing a guided meditation. He's also still cracking jokes, because he's that smart, right? He's on so many levels. He's having 4 conversations in his own brain. And I love this one because he says, he's giggling at meditators and he's saying, wherever you are and whatever's in your head, it's okay. You're in the right place. Keep trying to, get those thoughts out. Those are thoughts and that's real. And that's where you're at. And he's saying, longtime meditators, these people who take themselves a little too seriously are always trying to get to the perfect place. They're always trying to achieve this, unachievable, no thoughts, enter into the outer space and the ether of the universe, and in between the molecular cells, and they're trying to get and he's kind of making fun of it in a way. He goes, and he's just kind of laugh, and he's just like, you're just where you're at. It's not a competition to get, and you don't have to achieve this every time. So I guess the point of the story was, there you are, Miss Super Meditator, probably have these conversations with other super meditators, and then you go take a dose of this plant medicine, and then you're like, holy cow, you mean I can do this in 15 minutes and all this work and all this, like, I don't need to do this for 20 years. I could have just taken a couple of mushrooms. I mean, were you angry? Were you angry or like,
No, it was really wonderful. It was an affirmation of it wasn't exactly the same, but it was still it's like a similar landscape when you go into non-ordinary states. But I think what really, and that was just a beautiful experience on its own, but then just by chance, and that's a whole nother story, I ended up going in a 10-month program to be a certified microdoser. So I just wanted to learn, and I ended up in this program, and that's what changed my life. That was when I came to that conclusion. It's like, wait, like, I've taught meditation in the subcontinent a lot, mostly to diplomats and to people in the expat community, ambassadors, and people who are working in the trenches, like the NGOs, which my husband was a humanitarian worker for. And these are people with like you say, it's what's in front of you is the real meditation, and how are you going to deal with these struggles and stress? Yeah. And so for the last 15, 20 years, has been teaching mindfulness to relieve suffering. And then here I am thinking microdosing is like immediate, within a week, within 3 days, I had a Vietnam vet who is in his 70s, who has struggled since that time. And he is on 20 milligrams, which most people think doesn't even make a difference. With my client, I start very, very slow to start in a very mindful way. And he said for the first time in his life, he stopped. He didn't stop, but the ruminating thoughts didn't grab him as quickly. He noticed them, like you were saying about awareness. And this is like, here's someone who's in his almost mid-70s who is finding relief within 2 days. I mean,
That's
it's remarkable.
wild.
Yeah,
It's interesting, right? Because you've got like those ruminating thoughts, right? These are hardwired thoughts in his head. 50 years.
yeah,
He's been laying down the, the firing and wiring. The nerves are there. The neuroplasticity is probably more like concrete right now. It's just
yeah, yeah.
like these are, and to think that a few days on some psilocybin and he's already kind of going, yeah, I see that thought. It's,
Exactly.
I
I
can
got
now,
shivers because it's like this is incredible. We have this incredible ally right in front of us that can make such a difference in people's lives to relieve suffering. And as you know, most meditation, like the intent is to relieve suffering. And so this is why I'm becoming a spoken and wrote the book, and I'm so happy to be on your podcast because I want to get that message out that I'm a real advocate for this. If we do, and if we do so in an educated way with mindfulness, even the more to helping people relieve, not just the person who is suffering, it's also the caregivers. And I also want to give a call out for that because that's my own journey right now as a caregiver, and I also have clients who are, a lot of them are elderly, and I see so much suffering at the end of people's lives. And I can see how microdosing is helping both person with a medical condition or condition as well as the family members and those that have been providing support. And it's everybody together,
It really is. And I'm fascinated by how fast this is coming on and how fast people are awake. The awakening is like a wildfire. It shows, the couple things have to happen, I think, when that's the case. We're desperate. We are in a crisis. We're in a mental health crisis, right? And the system clearly not coping.
Mm-hmm.
And even in my discussions with people in the industry, the industry of mental health, the industry that it is, um, the machinery, there's no way to fix it. There's no way to address it. You can't hire enough therapists fast enough. The national program for peer networks and peer support, there's no national law yet. It's state by state, so it's, so still in your smaller states, your Montanas, your Wyomings, your North Dakotas, your Utahs, there's nobody there to help people. And then the rural counties of the South, where you're going to find a therapist, they go straight to the capital city where they move. This is so they can go make money. So it's, I don't see any hope of, looking out for the system to help people. It's going to
Well,
be people like yourself, I think, more caregivers and people who are more passionate.
that's very moving what you just said. But do you think, though, that with the psychedelic assisted therapy and the ketamine assisted therapy and MDMA, hopefully, it looks like it
Yeah,
will gain approval. What do you think? Do you think those will be some game changers in the mental
I
health?
think it's game changers. Already a
Yeah,
game.
already. Yeah.
Everybody it touches, it's healing. I mean, like I'm struggling to find the bad stories. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, people who take too much or have a bad trip or something else, but even then, even those people might be in some ways, you're going to forget about your other problem. At least you cured from the other one.
But
No, I
that's
mean,
a strong statement that, it's hard to find the bad stories. And I think that there is a lot of attention around that. And I think that I'm glad you said that you do think that that is, that's where we're headed.
yeah,
And so I think most of the attention within the psychedelic landscape is looking at those higher doses. And it's also easier for it to get through the medical system and
yes,
mental health relief.
yeah,
However, I would also like to keep that voice and the advocacy about microdosing. I think that microdosing can have it. Microdosing is also very powerful, and there are reasons to have higher doses, and certainly to have therapy around that.
Mm,
And there are reasons to have microdosing, and it's not that one is exclusive of the other. I mean, you wouldn't obviously you don't have to do both at the same time, but even in my own case, I did a high dose, and then it just naturally led to microdosing. So
yes.
microdosing can be extremely powerful because you're in your own life, in your own time, feeling the effects, you know?
Yeah. Or almost even not noticing it, Lauren, right? Like, I think in some ways you don't until something happens and you go, "Oh, yeah, 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 yeah." Like, for me, I was out that day running errands, just doing regular stuff. It's like having a microdosing for me is like having a cup of coffee, and it has the effect that you think or wish it has. More
Yeah.
clarity, a little bit more alert, a little bit more alert, a little more clarity. My brain fog goes away. My ADHD is a little bit calmer. My brain is like, if I did my brain waves, totally different brainwave for
Interesting. And
sure.
we're seeing with ADHD and autism incredible, there are subgroups of people finding so much relief and
A lot.
so much benefit from that. But also what you said is, you know, very true. When we take that dose, sometimes with my clients, so since I have that lens of mindfulness, when we meet up, a lot of it is about building awareness. So sometimes people say, "Oh, it didn't make a difference, didn't make a difference," and then I start to ask questions, and in those questions, go,
Yes.
"Oh yeah, like oh yeah, I didn't get into the fight with my daughter-in-law, and oh yeah, and my husband says blah blah blah, and oh yeah," and then or I'll say, and then one of the most common things is people are sleeping better. Now we know how important our brain health is when we have more rest for the brain.
Oh
So
God, yeah.
already that's huge. But then some people say, "Oh, I don't think it's having any effect." And then I'll ask them, so I'll have some of those questions. But another thing I do is I'll say, "Okay, take a few days off, like maybe take 5 days off, 6 days off, and then let's see." And sure enough, they're like, "Oh, those things came back. I reacted, I got angry, I get frustrated, so those things that, because after a while, you just kind of take it for granted that you're just like,
Yes.
it's just like, I'm just kind of going with the flow more than I used to. So it's an ally. It's not a panacea. It's not like a pill, because we also develop a relationship with the medicine.
Mm.
And I do believe there is this intelligence in the medicine that really wants to help you, wants to speak to you, but we have to allow.
If you've been around the earth long enough and you've got some mindfulness and you're connected to the universe, having psilocybin on this planet, there's just no accidents, right? I mean, there's no accidents. And it's here. It's meant for us to find it, meant for us to use it, embrace it. And the why is always something that's kind of interesting for me. Why is it here? What's the purpose? Why is this part of the plan? Because there's,
Mm,
what is the message? What are we supposed to take away
mm,
from the gift? Or is it not a gift? Is it a trick? Is it one of those things we have, like the long-term lesson is something else, you know? So, is there a message, but a hidden message inside us embracing it? I just asked that part of the question because
that's so interesting. Well, we're living in the mystery, and sometimes we don't know all the answers. But living in the mystery with more of an open heart, if we're more at ease, if we feel, one of the big things that I keep hearing in the landscape of the psychedelics, there's one word I hear again and again. It's connection. Connect. And I think we have to start. We with all the, you know, artificial intelligence coming out, everything is social media, order on Amazon or others, it's like we are disconnected more and more, and that is a reality. The connecting to ourselves, I think it starts connecting to ourselves,
oh yeah.
connecting to those deeper layers of our natural sense of peace. I think we are made for connection if we allow ourselves to get nourished by connect to it. But it's also the isolation we have with others. And so I think that through plant medicines, it does help us, and especially with autism, we see that people are, actually, I know of a client who has actually, for the first time, said he was looking with his eyes at someone else because he could never make eye, which is, something that oftentimes is common. And, just connecting with others, connecting with those that we care about, and then, connecting to something greater than just yourself. It's something we see again and again within the landscape that I think we can't, we can't underestimate the power of connection.
I totally agree on that. I'm going to ask you, I lost my little brain for a second there on the connection part. When we take this after some time, and this is that part of that question kind of follows up to that idea you're saying about when people don't see they've almost are in an altered state and they don't even realize they've achieved it. Right. They're in a mindfulness. Is there a spot that it actually changes us physically? Does the plant medicine help rewire the brain? Does it help fix some of that stuff and then we don't need it, or we'll need it for a different level of consciousness, a different level? Because there's got to be layers to this, right?
Yeah.
And your presence. I mean, I've gone through my own journey of being present, and I've found that it's not just you're present and you're not present. You're present and you're not present, and there's a spectrum.
Yeah.
And all these things I look at for your peace acronym, there's an absolute spectrum on every one of those.
Yes.
And so how does that work on this growth? How do we get, how do you see people moving, your clients? Are because you're going to know, like, they just open their eyes. They're level 1. They're finally present. And, but they're not present.
Yeah.
Are you kind of looking at clients like this?
I think that's a really interesting question. And it also has many ways of being answered, right? Like, we can look at it medically, and we're going to learn more and more and more about the brain.
For sure.
And the neuroplasticity. We do know that, the neurons are growing when we are using mushrooms, not just psychoactive mushrooms, but certainly the psychoactive mushrooms. We haven't been able to really do too many studies on microdosing, just because with a higher dose, you can put someone in a room at a university for 8 hours, so we haven't done that yet in the U.S. with microdosing to really look at people. But I think it is very layered, and we're talking about plant medicine that's not so linear. So I think we could find the linear answers, but it's also this beautiful subtlety of how we interact with it. And I like to think of it as, if we look at nature as a guide, there's always a time, no matter where you live and no matter how hot the climate is or how cold, there's a natural rhythm to life. And I think it's true with the ingestion of these earth medicines, that maybe each person finds their own rhythm that works for them.
Yeah.
And I help guide people with that. But at the end of the day, it's developing that relationship of what works for you, and then you're empowered to feel and make those decisions. And there's usually a natural break for whatever reason. It's just, even if you'll read a lot, it's like, after 8 weeks, do this, do that. And I feel like that's a good guideline, but it's also very linear, because there are going to be natural breaks. And I've seen that with all my clients. They go visit someone, they forgot, they got sick, so they don't feel like it. Not that you shouldn't take it if you're sick, but like they just. So there are always these natural breaks that occur.
Yeah, and I think that allows for some good settling in of where you've progressed, because otherwise you're constantly moving on these charts, right? These spectrums. And if you have a good break, you kind of find out where you've set, like the natural settling. Like you said, as soon as you give people a 5-day break, and all of a sudden they're pissed off at their husband, losing their mind. They're honking at people on the road, and they're like, "This plant medicine's doing nothing." Like, wait a minute, I've been off it for 3 days, and now I'm a monster. So, how far back do we regress, right? And what progress?
Exactly. I like to think of it like that, because then there is that where it settles in you, and then you are that person. Like anything, like your brain and the way we wire, the more we're around a habit or behavior that we want, the more it becomes us.
You were talking earlier and you were telling a story, about being at peace with ourselves and kind of, it starts there, right? And trying that intention of trying to get your, I'm trying to think of the phrase or the word, when your heart and your mind are aligned in your breath. Um,
Mm.
I can't remember the word we were using. I was very fortunate. I got to go to an equine therapy retreat,
Mm.
and where you interact with horses and donkeys and mules on this ranch in southern Arizona. Tammy Blakely is the lady that runs this, and she's a badass horsewoman from Arizona. Just rides horses, shoots guns off horses, barrel rolls, all this crazy stuff. She's just a badass cowgirl. But she's also an incredible human and really mindful, and having these retreats of healing people with the equines.
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
people don't, a lot of people, and I'm for sure, I should, at least I was not aware of the anatomy of equines and just how designed they are to be aware of people's feelings and emotions and
Mm.
energies. And she's teaching us how to, get your heart space and your breath and your mind and your heart connected.
Mm.
And when all this happens, the equine will actually now can almost talk to you,
Mm.
can have its own connection. But if you're not
Mhm.
congruent, I think that's the right word, but it's heart and mind.
Mhm.
And when you have this congruence, it's like there's a piece, like your heart rate goes to a certain level, your blood, like, and we have our, shockingly, we have this energy field. And horses have a radar where they can feel it from far away. They have like a giant field. And I didn't know any of this. And they also have their heads, the way their brains are shaped, they can receive the signal and also provide a healing signal in return. They heal people. And it's wild. And so there I was, in Arizona, trying to tell a donkey to follow me. And the donkey followed me. And at some point, we got in the pen, the donkey's on the other side of the pen, and I have to close my eyes and tell the donkey to come walk the stage with me, to come to me. And it did. Like, I was able to get into a space where I could communicate with a different animal non-verbally, just through my emotions, to draw them to my energy, and that they were open to it. That they know the game,
Yeah.
and they're not playing the game until you get your act together. It's so wild. They're like,
Yeah.
not yet. Nope, I don't feel it.
Wow.
No. Oh yeah, no, your mind is somewhere else. And you have, and it's
So
like
powerful.
so cool. So, if plant medicine can help us get there, and I definitely feel like my awareness, my journeys allowed me to understand this connection and to feel, to get my head, my brain together, and to like be aware of my own energy and the toxic part of it, and the part that my donkey my Henny was, she was such a amazing animal that she would, looking at me kind of going, yeah, Mr. Stearns, you are not in congruence, and I'm not getting it, you gotta, and as soon as I did, she just came over and just nudged up against me with her breath, and just like, wow.
And then did your heart melt even more?
My heart melted, and then I probably got incongruent, like right away. But just so powerful to think that that's the same kind of thing that can happen. I think, with microdosing, you can get into that space like the meditation. It's a kind of a cheat code for people to get there,
Yeah.
and to feel it and to see the benefits. And then I think you're sold.
Yeah. The proof is in the pudding. And as you're describing that beautiful experience with Penny, and I'm sure if your heart melted, you were even in deeper congruence. But
Yeah.
if we're at greater ease, people, they also start to melt around us.
Horses aren't that different from us, right? I mean, if she's feeling me, other people feel me. Other people feel you, right? So
Yeah. And we feel others. So, yeah, we also can notice who makes us, get more on edge and who helps us sink into relaxation.
so be aware.
Yeah.
Be aware of your energy, people.
Well, yeah. I do, the acronym of peace is not just because because it was easy to figure that out. In my last book, Mindfulness, it was for teachers. And I've always been, my intention in being in the world is to be a peacemaker. And I do truly believe that if we are more incongruent, that it starts with us. It's where we can become true peacemakers, starting with ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it's very powerful.
And I think this will be part of the, helping other people find the plant medicine and touching as many people as quickly as possible. Because it's now a race. I think the funny part is now we know.
We do know, and also what really, really saddens me is that I watch people now, especially the baby boomers, and I'm at the very tail end of that. And it doesn't matter how many years of meditation practice most people have had. I am seeing there's so much suffering, and as the texts say, age, sickness, death. People facing these things, they're very unresolved, and so there's a lot of struggle in this. And I think that the microdosing has been a big ally for quite a few, for my clients that I work with, one-on-one privately. But, we're looking at life as well. And so it doesn't have to always be the high doses. I think that we are seeing the higher doses are now being legally allowed to be used in certain institutions and facilities and clinics so that people have access to this incredible potential of being able to walk in the world more lightly.
It's a great spot. Great time to be, I love this. Great time to be alive. Cool. All the cool stuff's happening. All the crazy stuff's happening. So it's a good time to be, you wouldn't want to miss this show.
It's very challenging. But then, like you say, then all of a sudden we see all the psilocybin. Two new species were just discovered in Africa. And, it's like, this is a mystery, and we're in this journey, and there's just always something that can delight and fascinate and open our hearts. There's always hope. There's always hope. When we lose hope, start to not expand.
Yeah, I think there's always hope. And, look, we are just, we are these beautiful beings, these energies, these souls having a human experience just in these big meat suits, running around trying to not hurt each other and trying to figure out our ways. As a general rule, I think most of us are here just trying to be decent humans and, bumbling our way through it, sometimes making a mess of things. But we drag these meat suits around this, from here to there in this physical plane, in this physical game that we're in, this learning game or whatever kind of like a little game we're participating in, right? So we signed up for this.
We did, but there's so much suffering, also in the space that you are, through your podcast. I'm sure you hear so many stories of suffering and hopefully people overcoming, but you know that there are people that are seeking support and don't know what support can help them. And so I think the process of the mindful use of psychedelic medicine is very, very exciting.
Everything happens. This is a quote from my different mashup of quotes, and definitely from one of my last guests. It's Julian Sado. Things happen through us, for us. And I was loving that things happen. Things don't happen. For sure, the jar journey taught me things don't happen to people. They happen for people. And you're just you're somewhere along that spectrum of figuring that out. It depends. Everybody's, somewhere in that spectrum of figuring that out. And sometimes, they're in the victim state. It's happening to me. And sometimes they're kind of like getting the clue that it's happening for them. And then you reach this pinnacle of realizing, oh, it's actually happening through you. And
then if we get to the other side, then we can be advocates and share our own stories.
And share your own stories. And then, it's not just for you, it's through you, which I take to mean it really ultimately is your responsibility to turn it into a lesson and motivation for other people to see.
Beautiful.
That's like, for me, is the pinnacle. Now you can go and show people, this is what happened to me, but the reason was this,
Mm.
And I learned that, and now my purpose is to share it and to show others, right? To enlighten people that shit doesn't happen to you. There's no
That's
accident.
beautiful. Beautiful. Yes.
There's no accidents. I'm a real believer in that now. How do people remind us of the book, everything else, and then what's next?
The book is called Mindful Microdosing, a
Oh, I
guidebook
love it.
and journal. It is
Mm.
Amazon. And in Europe, well, most of your listeners are in the U.S., I'm assuming, but it's
Hmm.
and that is the biggest thing to just it's a journey. It's a journey of mindfulness and a journey of discovery, but it's very short. Like the writing part is very short. The journaling part is with a mechanism.
Oh, that's where it starts to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
I love
and
the
then,
journaling. Yeah.
you know, you can doodle or journal but then there's also I don't know how clearly this comes out.
Yeah,
but,
that's okay.
there is some information of like, what do you microdose with, which substance, how much, and but also through the lens of mindfulness. Because if you go on the internet, you'll find all those answers. But I like to say, well, can you find a rhythm of the lowest effective dose that is of greatest ease for you? So on the internet, most of the doses that are than I recommend. But anyhow, so that's the book, and I do coach privately, and I love to do interviews and podcasts just to get the message out that we can do this mindfully and we can microdose. It doesn't always have to be the large dose. It can also be in between because we can go very, very deep without several intensity or sometimes the anxiety and fear around. But and then eventually I will be doing courses, but through my internet, through my website, laurenalderfer.com, people can just reach out to me, and I do a screening for people because there are some contraindications, and some of them I just want to be aware of so that we can get that together. But there are some contraindications for microdosing or a reason to choose one substance over another.
Right.
So those, and then I do teach on Sunday. I'll be teaching a master for a few hours on mindful microdosing. So just kind of following how the mystery is unfolding, but really committed to mindful microdosing and the incredible benefits that it can help relieve people from suffering, but also be in this world and walk in the world more lightly and with a greater heart. Just a more peaceful.
I love that. And man, where if you're leading with an open heart and a peaceful heart in life, you're gonna do okay. You're gonna be okay, and you'll be a nicer person. Everybody around you will love you more. Lauren, I love the peace acronym, and I think it's very cool to me because that conversation got me to the spectrum idea of where people are at on the spectrum of these benefits. And and I just love your microdosing approach, the lowest amount below what you would think you notice, and use that because that's probably, there's, like you said, there's benefits, and you just may not always, unless you're really aware. I think maybe unless you've taken a higher dose, you might miss some of the subtleties that are happening, and the benefits.
Yeah, and I like to do that because I think, first of all, what's the hurry? We're doing this mindfully. And oftentimes people will not feel any effect, and I'm like, great. Now you can always go back to that.
Yeah.
And then at the same time we're building mindful awareness.
I love it. Well, it's spreading the word, Lauren. It's so great to meet you. I appreciate what you're doing.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love your bananas journey to get here. Boy, the universe really sent you on a round around the world trip to ultimately get here, right?
Actually, that too. It wasn't so much my journey. I was like, why am I coming back to the United States? I thought I was never going to live here again. And just lastly, I am on Instagram. It's just my name, Lauren.Alderfer. So just spreading the word about educating people on mindful microdosing.
Okay. Thanks again, Lauren, so much. Hang around for a little bit after the video, and we'll chat a little bit on the backside. Thanks everybody for listening and supporting mental health today. on this journey, please do, follow our little story down here, listen, share, and support. And it goes for the guest's message. It goes for just about mental health in general, people around you. So it's kind of a lovely little tagline because it just covers all the angles around mental health and around what we're trying to do with the show. So drop down if you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on, iTunes or iHeartRadio. Drop down, give us some love down there. You know what to do. Lauren, hang around for 20 seconds and I'll see you in a second.
Yeah, loose, baby.
So we're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals in public glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glass blowing. Yeah, we're going to go make a magical giant jar with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.